the beige envelope. In my neighborhood, this is not a friendly letter. It's not a "congrats on the new car" or a "hey, let's have a barbecue." This is the official parchment of the Heron's Landing Homeowners Association, and it's the equivalent of a bat signal, except instead of a hero, it summons a 42-year-old graphic designer in cargo shorts to go, "Oh, what now?" I held it between my thumb and forefinger, treating it like it was coated in something infectious. Which, in a way, it was. It was coated in Brenda. I walked inside, letting the screen door slam shut. My wife, Sarah, was at the kitchen counter, scrolling through her phone and nursing a cup of coffee. She looked up, saw the envelope, and let out a long, theatrical groan. "We got one, didn't we?" she asked. "We got one," I confirmed, dropping it on the granite countertop. "The beige death warrant." "Don't be dramatic, Dave," she said, though she was already squinting at the return address. "What is it this time? Is the recycling bin not sufficiently parallel to the curb again?" "I'm shaking," I said. "I'm genuinely afraid to open it. What if she saw me watering the hydrangeas at 10:01 a.m.? The bylaws clearly state 10:06 a.m. is the cutoff. I could be a criminal." "Just open it, you big baby." I tore the envelope, a small puff of what I assumed was pure concentrated spite escaping from within. I unfolded the single, heavy stock sheet of paper. "Dear Mr. Johnson," I read aloud, adopting my best soulless automaton of suburbia voice. "A routine inspection conducted on October 24th revealed a violation of the Heron's Landing covenants and restrictions, specifically a violation of Article 5, subsection 2b, aesthetic maintenance." "Aesthetic maintenance," Sarah repeated, savoring the term like it was a bad wine. "That sounds vague and ominous." "Oh, it gets better," I said. "She's been specific. It was noted that your rear deck facing the community retention pond is exhibiting significant peeling." Sarah put her phone down. "Peeling? It's stain, Dave. It's stain. It fades. It doesn't peel. That's not how stain works. She knows that, right?" "Brenda doesn't care about the physics of wood treatment, honey. She cares about control. Listen to this. The current state of the deck is considered an eyesore and is not in keeping with the pristine standards of the Heron's Landing community." I lowered the letter. Pristine. She used the word pristine. We live in a swamp. Nothing here is pristine. "What's the fine?" "A fine of $150 has been assessed," I read, "and failure to rectify the issue within 14 days will result in additional compounding fines." Rectify. I love that. It makes me sound like a supervillain. "I'll get you, Captain Rectify." "This is ridiculous," Sarah said, finally getting up. "Let's go see the significant peeling. I want to see the crime scene." We walked through the living room and slid open the glass door to the deck. The air was humid. A couple of actual herons were standing in the pond 50 yards away, probably also violating some rule about loitering. We stood side by side on the deck, two investigators looking for a clue. The deck was a deck. It was made of wood. It was outdoors. We'd had it stained warm cedar 3 years ago. Sure, it was a little faded in the high traffic areas, but peeling? "Where is it?" Sarah asked, scanning. "I don't see anything." Wait. I think I found it," I said, crouching down near the top of the steps. I pointed to a single, tiny spot, no bigger than a quarter. A sliver of the old stain had, in fact, flaked up. "That's it," I declared. "That is the significant peeling. This is the eyesore that's bringing down the property values of the entire zip code." "My God," Sarah said, playing along. "It's hideous. Cover it up, Dave. Think of the children." "She must have used a zoom lens," I said, standing up and brushing my knees. "Or a forensics kit. She probably came back here in the dead of night wearing night vision goggles and took a scraping." "This is harassment, you know," Sarah said, her tone shifting from sarcastic to genuinely annoyed. "This is the third time this year. First, it was the unapproved mailbox." "Which was the exact mailbox the builder installed," I reminded her. "Then the great lawn height debacle of 2024, I shuddered. I will never forget that day. I'd been working in my home office, which faces the street, and saw Brenda marching onto my lawn. Not on the sidewalk. On the lawn. She was carrying her clipboard and a ruler, I'm not kidding, a 12-inch wooden ruler. I went outside. "Can I help you, Brenda?" She didn't even flinch. She just jammed the ruler into a patch of my front lawn. "Article 4, Section 3A, Mr. Johnson. All grass must be maintained at a uniform height not to exceed 3 inches. You," she said, pointing the ruler at me, "are at 3.5. I just stared at her. "Brenda, I'm mowing it tomorrow." "Tomorrow is not today," she'd said, making a note on her clipboard. "You'll receive the fine in the mail." And I did. $50 for half an inch of grass. Now, standing on my peeling deck, that old rage came bubbling back up. "This isn't about the deck," I said to Sarah, pacing. "This isn't about $150. This is about that woman. She has a personal vendetta against us ever since I refused to volunteer for the Fall Festival Gutter Cleaning Committee." "So what are you going to do?" Sarah asked. "Just pay it? It's not worth the fight." "Pay it?" I scoffed. "No, I'm not paying it, and I'm not fixing this quarter-sized piece of non-peeling. I'm going to appeal. I'm going to the meeting. I'm going to bring a magnifying glass. I'm going to bring a wood stain expert. I'm going to fight this." Sarah sighed, leaning against the doorframe. "Okay, Dave. You fight it. Just try not to quote the Declaration of Independence this time. I don't think the board appreciated your tyranny speech during the mailbox incident." "They needed to hear it," I muttered, already composing my appeal in my head. This was not a violation. This was a personal attack. And I was going to win. The HOA monthly meeting was held in the Heron's Landing Community Clubhouse, a building that was, itself, a violation of aesthetic maintenance. The architecture was pure 1990s, Florida stucco depression, and the inside was a sea of beige. Beige walls, beige carpet, beige folding chairs. The only color came from the fluorescent lights, which buzzed with a sickly yellow hum, making everyone look like they had jaundice. I sat in the back row, clutching my evidence. A single 8x10, high-resolution macro lens photo of the peeling quarter. Sarah had wished me luck, and then, very wisely, claimed she had a work thing. The meeting was, as usual, a masterclass in petty grievances. Mrs. Henderson from down the street wanted to formally complain about Mr. Patel's wind chimes, which she claimed were agitating her cats. Mr. Patel argued that the wind chimes were ancestral. It was riveting. After 45 minutes of this, Brenda, sitting at the head table with her board, a panel of 3 other beige-wearing septuagenarians who just nodded whenever she spoke, finally looked at her clipboard and said, "Next item, the appeal of Mr. Dave Johnson regarding violation 44-7B. That was me. Violation 44-7B. I walked to the front, feeling like I was defending myself at The Hague. "Brenda, board members," I said, trying to keep my voice calm and reasonable. "I am here to appeal the fine for my deck." Brenda, wearing a visor indoors for some reason, looked at me over the top of her reading glasses. Mr. Johnson, the violation was clearly documented. That's just it, Brenda, I said, sliding the 8x10 photo onto the table. I'm not sure what was documented. My wife and I inspected the deck, and this, I tapped the photo, is the only spot we could find that remotely matches your description. As you can see, it's a tiny quarter-sized spot of fading, not significant peeling. One of the board members, a guy named Gary, who I'm pretty sure just shows up for the free donuts, actually picked up the photo. He squinted at it. He's right, Bren. It's just a little spot. I felt a small surge of hope. Brenda didn't even look at the photo. She just stared at me, her gaze as cold as the room's air conditioning. Mr. Johnson, the bylaws are clear. Article 5, subsection 2b. All exterior surfaces must be maintained in a pristine and uniform condition. Your deck is neither. Pristine? I repeated, my reasonable tone starting to crack. It's an outdoor floor, Brenda. People walk on it. Birds exist near it. Rain happens. What exactly is the legal definition of pristine in the Heron's Landing covenants? The definition, Mr. Johnson, she said, her voice dropping to a low, dangerous monotone, is not what you have. The violation was observed by an official board member. By you, I said. You're the one who observed it. Yes, she said, as if this proved her point. I am the president. The appeal is denied. The fine stands. You have 12 days to rectify the issue and pay the fine. Next item. Pool furniture reupholstering. That's it? I said, stunned. No vote? No discussion? The appeal is denied, she repeated, already looking at a fabric swatch. I stood there for a full 10 seconds, the blood roaring in my ears. The fluorescent lights buzzed. Mrs. Henderson was already raising her hand, probably to complain about the color of the fabric swatches. I snatched my photo off the table and walked out. I sat in my car for 5 minutes, just breathing. This wasn't about a deck. This wasn't about 150. This was about a power-mad tyrant in a visor running a beige-colored dictatorship. I drove home, defeated. Sarah saw my face when I walked in. That bad, huh? She didn't even look at the photo, I said, slumping onto the sofa. She just denied it. The appeal is denied, like she was a damn queen. Well, Sarah sighed, sitting next to me. I guess you'd better just buy a can of stain. It'll take an hour. It's not worth the stroke you're about to give yourself. I stared at the coffee table. She was right, of course. The smart thing to do was to just sand that one spot, dab on some stain, and pay the fine. It was the easy adult thing to do. But as I sat there, the words she used kept echoing in my head. Pristine. Uniform. Rectify. It wasn't about the hour, I said, mostly to myself. It was about the words. She's so obsessed with the words. What are you talking about? Sarah asked. Brenda. She's a robot. She only operates based on the bylaws. She's always quoting them. And a small, slow, and truly terrible idea began to form in my brain. It was a tiny little spark of malicious compliance. I'm a details guy, right? I said, looking at Sarah. I'm a graphic designer. I read the fine print. Maybe I should really read the bylaws she's so fond of. The whole thing. Dave, no, Sarah said, her voice full of dread. Don't do a Dave thing. It's not a Dave thing, it's a due diligence thing. I retreated to my office, pulled up the 80-page Heron's Landing Covenants and Restrictions PDF from the community website, a website I had designed for free, ironically, and poured myself a generous glass of whiskey. For 2 hours, I read. It was the most mind-numbing text known to man. I learned all about approved shed specifications, fence height maximums, and the 12 approved shades of beige for mailbox posts. Blah, blah, blah. Roofing materials, driveway composition, holiday decorations, I muttered to myself, scrolling. And then I found it. Section 8, Patios and Decks. My heart started to beat a little faster. I read the section. It was short. All patio and deck surfaces must be regularly maintained, free of debris, mildew, and peeling. Surfaces must be finished with a single uniform application of stain or paint to ensure a pristine appearance. That was it. A single uniform application of stain or paint. Okay, I thought. So she'll just nail me on the color. I scrolled back up to Section 7, House Exteriors. And there it was, a huge detailed list. Appendix A1, Approved Exterior Color Palette. It had 24 approved earth tone colors. Riverbed Taupe, Gentle Fawn, Quiet Grege. My plan was dead. If I painted the deck, I'd have to use one of those. But wait, I'm a details guy. I reread the heading for Section 7. This section applies to all vertical building surfaces, including siding, trim, and garage doors. Vertical surfaces. I frantically scrolled back down to Section 8, Patios and Decks. I read it again, and again, and a third time, just to be sure. It wasn't there. The section for patios and decks, horizontal surfaces, had no appendix. It had no list. It had no color restrictions at all. It was an omission. A tiny, glorious, beautiful loophole in Brenda's beige-colored iron curtain. I sat back in my chair, the whiskey glass halfway to my mouth. The plan, which had been a tiny spark, now roared to life as a full-blown Technicolor inferno. I walked back out to the living room. Sarah was watching TV, but she looked up at me, sensing the energy radiating off me. "What?" she said, narrowing her eyes. "What did you find? You have your I just solved a design problem face on, but it looks evil." I just smiled. "Honey, what's your favorite board game?" The next morning, I was a man possessed. I was on a mission. This wasn't just about non-compliance anymore. This was about malicious compliance, and I, a professional graphic designer, was going to execute it with military precision. The first step was the rectification. Brenda wanted me to fix the peeling. Fine. I was going to fix the hell out of it. I was going to sand the entire 20-by-20-foot deck down to the bare virgin wood. There would be no stain, no peeling, no anything. It would be a blank canvas. My tiny orbital hand sander wasn't going to cut it. I needed professionals. I grabbed my laptop and typed in deck and patio restoration. I made 3 calls. The first guy, I was vague. "Yeah, I need my deck sanded. Completely stripped." "No problem," he'd said gruffly. "We'll sand it and restain it. What color? We got a special on cedar this month." "Oh, I'm not restaining," I said. "What?" "I'm just leaving it bare." "You can't leave it bare, buddy," he'd scoffed. "It'll warp in a week. That's a warranty nightmare. I'm not touching it." Click. The second guy was more curious. "So you want us to sand it, and then you're doing the stain?" "Something like that," I said. "I'm painting it. A custom job." "Painting a deck? Like a solid color?" He sounded personally offended. "You're gonna kill that beautiful wood, man. Plus, it's Gonna peel in a year, and you'll be right back where you started. That's a risk I'm willing to take, I said. All right, whatever, he sighed. My guys can sand it. It'll be $1,200. $1,200. Ouch. This was getting expensive. But I was in too deep. I had one more call on my list. Miguel's Decks and Fences. They had good reviews. A friendly voice answered. Miguel's, this is Miguel. Hi, Miguel, I said, launching into my new practiced spiel. I have a bit of an unusual project. I need my deck completely sanded down to bare wood. I am going to be painting it myself afterward, but it's a specific design, so I just need the canvas prepped. There was a pause. An unusual project, huh? I could hear the smile in his voice. I like unusual. Where are you located? I gave him my address. Heron's Landing, he said, and the smile in his voice got wider. Ah, yes, I know Heron's Landing. I do a lot of fence mending over there. Literally. Oh, I said. Let me guess, he said. Does this unusual project have anything to do with a violation notice? It might, I said, trying to be coy. And does the person who gave you this notice perhaps wear a visor at all times? She was wearing one indoors at a 7 p.m. meeting, I said. Miguel let out a full, hearty laugh. Brenda, of course. I'll be there in 30 minutes. I have to see this. True to his word, exactly 29 minutes later, a large Miguel's Decks truck pulled into my driveway. Miguel hopped out. He was a sturdy guy in his 40s with a genuine, easygoing smile, but his eyes were sharp. He looked like he knew his way around a 2x4. Dave, he said, shaking my hand firmly. Miguel, show me the crime scene. I led him through the house and onto the deck. This is it, I said. He walked the perimeter, stomped on a few boards, and knelt to look at the peeling spot. So this is the significant violation? He asked, pointing at the quarter-sized flake. That's the one. Brenda is a piece of work, he whistled, standing up. Okay, so you want to sand this whole thing down. 20 ups 20, standard pressure-treated pine. Easy job. My guys can knock this out in a day. Call it 800? 800? I said, surprised. The last guy quoted me 1,200. The last guy doesn't know the Brenda rate, Miguel said with a wink. I give a discount for clients who are clearly suffering under her reign. So, $800 for the sanding. Now tell me about this custom job. What's the plan? You're not, I don't know, painting a giant middle finger, are you? Because somebody in the next neighborhood overtried that, and the bylaws do have a patterns and decency clause. No, I said. Nothing so crude. I'm a professional. This will be clean. Pristine, even. Okay. I took a deep breath. This was it. The moment of truth. I'm going to paint a full-scale regulation twister board. Miguel just stared at me. His smile was gone. He was completely blank. I started to get nervous. It's a board game. You know, circles. Red, green, blue, yellow. Miguel's face remained blank for 3 full seconds. Then it cracked. His shoulders started to shake, and he let out a single, sharp, "Ha!" which then exploded into the loudest, most genuine laugh I'd ever heard. He actually had to lean on the railing. A twister board, he howled, wiping a tear from his eye. Oh, that's beautiful. That is art, man. That's like performance art. So you'll do it? Do it? I'm not just doing it, I'm going to be involved, he said, his voice full of new energy. My guys will sand this. We'll use the fine grit paper, make it smooth as a baby's, well, you know. But you said regulation. You're a designer, right? Right. So you need the grid to be perfect. The circles have to be exact. You can't just eyeball that. It'll look sloppy, and she'll get you on uniformity. You need perfect tape. I was just going to use standard blue painter's tape. No, 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 Miguel said, waving his hand. Blue tape will bleed on fresh sanded pine. You need the expensive stuff. The yellow frog tape for delicate surfaces. And for the circles, 12-inch diameter, right? You know the regulations? I have kids, he laughed. Look, my guys will sand it. Then I'll come back. I've got a buddy at a sign-making shop. I can get custom-cut 12-inch vinyl stencils. We'll lay out the grid, we'll tape it all off. Perfectly. I'll throw in the taping for free. Consider it a community service. Miguel, I don't know what to say. Don't say anything, he said, his smile turning into a conspiratorial grin. Just send me pictures. I want a picture of the board. I want a picture of the letter you get after the board. And most of all, I want a picture of Brenda's face when she sees it. That's my payment. You've got a deal, I said, shaking his hand again. The next 2 days were a symphony of destruction. Miguel's crew showed up, and it sounded like a 747 was permanently landing in my backyard. They had industrial belt sanders, edge sanders. The noise was glorious. The entire deck was enveloped in a cloud of fine, warm cedar dust. On the afternoon of the first day, I saw her, Brenda, on her routine inspection walk. She was walking on the path by the retention pond, her clipboard in hand. She stopped, looked at my house, and saw the sanding crew. She didn't wave. She didn't come over. She just nodded. A single, smug, satisfied nod. Good, that nod said. The peasant is complying. I was in my office window. I raised my coffee mug to her. You're welcome, Brenda, I yelled, even though she couldn't hear me. Glad to see you're enjoying the rectification. By the end of day 2, my deck was unrecognizable. It was pale, blonde, and unbelievably smooth. Miguel came by himself that evening, as promised. With a laser measure and a chalk line, he and I laid out a perfect 4x6 grid. He was a true craftsman. 4 rows, 6 circles per row, he narrated. Regulation. Now, the stencils will be here tomorrow. But you need to paint the base coat. Base coat? Yeah. What's the background? The board part. I hadn't even thought of that. I guess white? Classic, he nodded. Go buy the best exterior deck paint you can find. High gloss white. And get the high gloss for the colors, too. You want this thing to shine. You're aiming for pristine, remember? That weekend was the great painting. Sarah, who had been calling me a complete and total lunatic, was now fully on board. The absurdity had won her over. If we're doing this, she said, pulling her hair back into a ponytail, we are doing this right. We spent all of Saturday rolling on 3 coats of high-gloss, ultra-pure white deck paint. It was blinding. It was so bright, I was pretty sure we were affecting local air traffic. We let it dry overnight. On Sunday, we applied the 24 custom-cut vinyl circle stencils that Miguel had dropped off on my porch, like a paint supply fairy. And then, the colors. We bought 4 quarts of the most expensive, high-gloss, exterior-over-anything paint. Right foot red. Left hand green. Right hand blue. Left foot yellow. The colors were so vibrant they almost looked fake. We sat on the deck, each with a small roller, like 2 kids in a deeply weird art class. This is the most juvenile, petty, and ridiculous thing we have ever done, Sarah said, meticulously filling in a blue circle. I know, I replied, carefully edging a red one. Isn't it glorious? pass the left-hand green. This one's streaky. We got paint on our clothes, in our hair, on the dog. He got a little yellow on his tail. We laughed. We argued over technique. You're outside the lines. It's a stencil. You can't go outside the lines. You found a way. By Sunday evening, we were done. We were exhausted. We were covered in patriotic polka dots. And we were standing on the steps, looking at our masterpiece. It was magnificent. It was perfect. I don't just mean good. I mean it was perfect. It was a flawless, full-scale 2020 twister board, shimmering with a pristine high-gloss finish. The ultra-pure white base was so bright it almost hurt to look at, and the 24 circles, 6 red, 6 blue, 6 yellow, 6 green, were so sharp and vibrant they looked like they'd been photoshopped onto my lawn. It was, by any and all definitions, a single, uniform application of paint. It just so happened to be a uniform pattern. "My God," Sarah whispered, standing next to me. "What have we done?" "We have rectified the issue," I said, my voice full of mock seriousness. "We have complied with Article 5, subsection 2b. We have achieved aesthetic maintenance." "It looks like a unicorn had a seizure and threw up," she said. "A pristine seizure," I corrected her. The next morning, I initiated Phase 3, the bait. It was simple. I woke up at 7 a.m., made a huge mug of coffee, grabbed the newspaper, and went out to sit on my brand new deck. I placed a lawn chair right on the line between a left-hand green and right-hand blue. And I waited. I read the sports section. I did the crossword. I waved to a neighbor, Bill, who was walking his dog. Bill stopped. He squinted. "Morning, Dave. New paint?" "Yep," I said cheerfully. "Just complying with the bylaws." Bill looked at the deck, looked back at me, looked toward Brenda's house, and then a slow grin spread across his face. "Right," he said, nodding. "Complying. Looks uniform. You have a great day, Dave." "You too, Bill." He was the first, but he wasn't the one I was waiting for. I knew Brenda's schedule. 8:15 a.m., like clockwork. She does her morning patrol along the retention pond path. It gives her a perfect view of everyone's backyard. At 8:13 a.m., I took a sip of my coffee. At 8:14 a.m., I saw her. A little speck of beige and white, visor firmly in place, clipboard at the ready. She was marching. Head down, making notes. She passed my property line. She was 20 yards past it before the brightness must have registered in her peripheral vision. It was cinematic. First, the footsteps slowed. Then, they stopped. I watched her head, very, very slowly, turn. There was a long pause. She was perfectly still. I'm pretty sure her brain was trying to process the visual data. Does not compute. Does not compute. Then I saw her hand come up and she lowered her sunglasses. As if they were the problem. As if, underneath them, the deck would just be warm cedar. I took another sip of coffee. She took a step back. Then another. She was now directly parallel with my deck. Her clipboard was hanging limply at her side. Her mouth was slightly open. I gave her my best, friendliest, "Hi, neighbor," wave. That broke the spell. Her mouth snapped shut. The clipboard was raised, and she began to storm towards my house. She didn't use the sidewalk. She cut right across my lawn, my perfectly 3-inch-high lawn, I might add, in a dead, furious sprint. I stood up calmly and waited at the edge of the deck. This was it. The main event. She arrived at the bottom of the steps, panting, her face a shade of red that wasn't on the twister board but probably should have been. "What?" she hissed, her voice trembling with a white-hot rage I had only ever dreamed of inspiring. "Is that?" "That?" I said, looking back at the deck as if I'd forgotten it was there. "Oh, that's the rectified deck. You like it? I went with a high-gloss finish, you know, for pristine maintenance. I was worried the old stain was too porous." You can't," she sputtered, jabbing a finger at it. "Those colors, those awful bright colors, that is not an approved color." I held up a hand. "Ah, now, Brenda, this is where you're mistaken. It's not an approved color. It's 4 approved colors." "They are not approved!" she shrieked. "Well, you're right about that," I conceded. "But they don't need to be. See, I did a little reading. A real deep dive into the CNRs. And it's fascinating stuff, Brenda. Just fascinating." I started pacing on the white lines, like a lawyer addressing a jury. "See, Bylaw 7, Article 4, which is the house exterior section, does have a very specific list of 24 approved earth tone colors. Quiet Greige is a personal favorite, but that section explicitly states it applies only to vertical building surfaces, siding, trim, and so on." I stopped and pointed straight down. "This," I said, tapping my foot on a yellow circle, "is a horizontal decking surface. It's covered separately, in Section 8. And I read Section 8, Brenda. I read it 5 times. It says the deck must be regularly maintained and finished with a single uniform application of stain or paint. It says nothing, not one word, about color restrictions." Brenda's face was going through an extraordinary transformation. The red was fading, replaced by a pale, sickly white. She was realizing her mistake. The omission. "This," I said, sweeping my arm across the glorious, ridiculous scene, "is a 100% compliant, freshly painted, non-peeling deck. It is pristine. And the pattern? It's uniform. 4 rows, 6 circles each, perfectly symmetrical." This is a mockery," she finally managed, finding her voice again. You're mocking the bylaws. You're mocking me." "Brenda, I would never," I said, placing a hand on my heart. "I am a graphic designer. This isn't mockery. This is modern, minimalist, interactive art. It explores the relationship between suburban conformity and primary color theory. Or it's just a deck. Either way, it's compliant." This is a game," she shrieked, finally landing on the obvious. "It is a game," I said, brightening. "I'm so glad you noticed. It's Twister. You know, right foot red, left hand blue." I leaned in conspiratorially. "Care for a spin? We're not using the spinner, though. We're getting the Alexa skill for it. Much more modern." That was the final straw. "You will be hearing from the board," she screamed, her voice cracking. "And our lawyers, this monstrosity will not stand." She spun on her heel, her sneakers squeaking on the sidewalk, and stormed off, her clipboard held like a weapon. I watched her go, then sat back down in my chair. My coffee was cold, but it was the most delicious, satisfying cup of coffee I'd ever had. Brenda, it turned out, was not bluffing. The very next day, a new beige envelope was in my mailbox. This time, it wasn't a warning. It was a volley of fines. Violation: unapproved alteration of exterior. $250. Violation: creation of a public nuisance. $100. Violation: failure to maintain neighborhood aesthetics. $150. And my personal favorite, Violation, operation of an unsanctioned game park. $500. Game park? I yelled to Sarah, who was reading them over my shoulder. She thinks I'm running a Six Flags in my backyard? Does she see any roller coasters? Dave, this is 1,000, Sarah said, her voice a little shaky. The fun was rapidly evaporating. She's not playing, and she mentioned lawyers. Maybe we should, I don't know, paint it Quiet Graiga? I looked at the fines, I looked at my magnificent deck, and I felt that same spark of righteous indignation. No, I said, my voice quiet. She's betting I'll flinch. She's betting I'll get scared and give in. But she's wrong. Unsanctioned game park? Okay, if she wants a game park, we'll give her a game park. I went to my computer, opened up a new design file, and typed, "You are cordially invited to the first, and possibly last, inaugural Heron's Landing Twister Tournament." I found a 1970s-style graphic of tangled-up people, put my address, and set a date. This Saturday, 3 p.m. Shoes off, please. This is a high-gloss surface. I emailed it to my entire neighborhood contact list, minus Brenda, of course. Saturday came, and I was nervous. What if no one showed? What if it was just me and Sarah, standing alone on our big, stupid deck? At 2:55 p.m., I had my answer. Bill, the neighbor with the dog, came over. "I'm here for the, community athletic event," he said, holding a six-pack of beer. "You're in the right place," I grinned. Then, the Patels, the wind chime family, showed up with a bowl of samosas. Then the Hendersons, minus the cat-obsessed Mrs., thank God. Then another family, and another. By 3:30 p.m., my backyard was full. I had 20 neighbors, 20, all mingling, laughing, and drinking beer. And my deck, my God, my deck was in use. We had a full-blown 10-person game of Twister going. Right hand blue. No, that's my foot, Gary. I'm falling. I'm falling. This is the most I've sweat since 1998. It was loud. It was joyous. It was a complete and total success. People weren't just on the deck. They were celebrating it. They were taking selfies. Miguel, my contractor, even showed up. He wasn't working. He just brought a cooler. I had to see it for myself, he said, handing me a beer. It's more beautiful than I ever imagined. Thanks for the assist, Miguel, I said. This is going to be neighborhood legend, you know, he said, looking at the human pretzel on the deck. They'll call you Twister Deck Dave. I can live with that. It was right at the peak of the fun, as Gary was attempting a left foot red that was physically impossible, that I saw them. Blue and red flashing lights painting streaks across the houses, a squad car, then another. They pulled up right in front of my house. The music, we had 70s funk playing softly, died. The game stopped. Everyone froze. And like a creature summoned from the depths, Brenda appeared on the sidewalk, pointing. Right there, officers! That's the house! 2 cops got out of the first car. One was older, with a face that had seen every stupid suburban dispute in the county. The other was younger, and I could see him struggling to hide his confusion. The older one, whose name tag read Miller, sighed and walked up my driveway. "Evening, folks," he said, his voice as tired as his face. "We got a call about, he looked at his notepad. A large-scale, unsanctioned gambling and alcohol-fueled public disturbance." I stepped forward. "Hi, Officer Miller. I'm Dave Johnson. I live here. There's no gambling, I promise. And the alcohol is just... well, it's Saturday. We're just having a party, playing a board game." Officer Miller looked past me, at the 20 frozen adults. He looked at the deck. His eyes scanned the bright, high-gloss circles. The younger cop, Sanchez, spoke up. Is that a twister board?" "Yes, sir, it is," I said. Brenda, from the sidewalk, was vibrating. "It's a nuisance! The colors are blinding! It's attracting elements!" Officer Sanchez was now actively fighting a smile. He coughed into his hand. Officer Miller looked at Brenda, then back at me. "Ma'am," he said, projecting his voice to the sidewalk. "I'm not sure blinding colors is a criminal offense. This just looks like a party. Sir, is your music at a reasonable volume?" "I think so, officer," I said. "It's just some James Brown." "And are you charging admission for this, game?" "No, sir. Samosas are free, though." Officer Miller sighed, the sound of a man who just wanted to go home. "Brenda, is anyone trespassing? Is anyone being threatened?" "He's threatening the aesthetic of the neighborhood," she yelled. "Ma'am, that's an HOA matter," Miller said, finally at the end of his rope. "This is a civil issue. There is nothing criminal happening here. These folks are on their own property. Please stop calling 911 unless there is an actual emergency." But, she stammered. He just turned his back on her. He looked at me. "Sir, try to keep the, enthusiastic gaming to a respectable level. Have a good night." "Will do, officer. Thank you." As they turned to walk away, I heard Officer Sanchez mutter to Miller, "Did you see the deck, though?" And I heard Miller's reply, low and clear. "Dispatch, cancel the call. Situation is right foot green. We're clear." The two cops got in their cars and drove off. There was a full 10-second silence. Then Bill, the neighbor, raised his beer. "To Twister Deck, Dave!" The party roared back to life, twice as loud as before. I was a local folk hero. I looked over at the sidewalk. Brenda was gone. The party was a massive victory for morale, but I knew it wasn't the end of the war. Brenda was the kind of person who, when she lost a battle, just retreated to find a bigger cannon. Sure enough, 2 days later, the beige envelopes were replaced by a white one. A long, legal-sized one. "Cease and desist," it said in big, angry letters. "From the law offices of Gable, Gable, and Thorne." It was a 10-page document full of whereas, heretofore, and insofar. The gist was simple. They were reclassifying my deck as an unapproved structure. They claimed the paint had changed the structural nature of the deck, and that I was in violation of a dozen new bylaws I'd never heard of. I had 48 hours to begin chemical removal of the paint, or they would file an injunction, put a lien on my house, and sue me for legal fees. This time I was the one who felt sick. "Okay," Sarah said, putting down the letter. "Now I'm mad." "What are we going to do?" I asked. "I can't afford a legal battle with the HOA. They've got a war chest." "No," Sarah said, a very cold, very unfamiliar smile appearing on her face. "You can't, but I can." "What are you talking about? You're a designer for a—" "I'm a corporate lawyer, Dave," she said, tapping the letter. "My specialty is contract law and intellectual property. This is just a very, very stupid contract. And Brenda just violated about 6 different selective enforcement and harassment clauses." I just stared at her. "You're a lawyer?" "I've been telling you I'm a lawyer for 15 years, Dave. What did you think I did all day?" "I thought you designed legal-themed websites? I don't know. You always just said you had Briefs to read. Yes, Dave, legal briefs. Now get me the CNRs, a copy of our deed, all those fines, and a picture of Gary with his foot by his ear. I've got a letter to write. Sarah didn't use a beige envelope. She used her firm's official, heavy bond, letter-marked stationery. It was 1 page. It was not sarcastic. It was not funny. It was, quite frankly, the most terrifying document I'd ever read. In dry, ice-cold legal speak, it quoted the exact bylaws I had found, Section 7 and Section 8. It pointed out that paint is not a structure by any legal definition. It systematically dismantled their nuisance claim, citing the police report, which she had requested, where Officer Miller deemed the party not a criminal matter. Then it went on the offensive. It attached copies of the new fines, calling them retaliatory, frivolous, and a clear case of selective enforcement and personal harassment. It concluded by stating that the $1,000 in retaliatory fines was rejected, that the cease and desist was without merit, and that if the board or its legal counsel contacted us in any way other than a written apology, we would be immediately filing a countersuit for harassment, seeking full legal fees, punitive damages, and a formal inquiry into the board's misappropriation of community funds for a personal vendetta. We sent it via certified mail. And then, silence. A beautiful, deafening, glorious silence. The emails stopped. The letters stopped. The fines vanished from my online HOA portal. Weeks went by. Nothing. I still saw Brenda on her walks. She wouldn't look at my house. She'd cross the street to avoid walking past it. It was like my deck was radiating a force field of pure, legal garlic. The story ends about a month later. It was a warm November evening. The Twister tournament was a fading, legendary memory. I was on the deck, which was still as bright and ridiculous as the day we painted it, drinking a beer. Sarah came out and sat next to me. "You know," she said, looking at the red and blue circles, "it's kind of grown on me. It's cheerful." "Right?" I said. "It really brightens the place up." "Good news," she said, taking a sip of her wine. "Brenda and her husband put their house up for sale." I sat up straight. "No, you're kidding." "Nope. Miguel told me this afternoon. He's over there right now, in fact, giving them a quote to, and I quote, fix their peeling deck stain so they can sell." I looked at Sarah. She looked at me. A slow grin spread across both our faces. I leaned back in my chair, raising my beer to the sky. I looked down at the paint-smeared wood beneath my feet. A monument to petty, precise, and glorious victory. Left foot red, right hand blue. It was the most beautiful, pristine, and perfectly uniform victory I'd ever seen.